All right, welcome back to another great episode of Dr. J Radio Live. Of course, I'm your host, Dr. J, broadcasting from the City of Evil. That's right, I'm calling it City of Evil today, especially since the United States, the federal United States, prosecuted and convicted one of my favorite all-time guests and a friend of mine, which is the one and only Roger Stone. But nonetheless, we're going to have a blast tonight because we have a guest who is also someone who has been here a long time, and she knows a lot of amazing stuff. So with that being said, let me introduce her, the one and only Miss Lasha Seniuk. Lasha, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Doc. It's a real pleasure to be on the air with you.
Oh, it's a pleasure to finally have you on. You know, we've been trying to work this out together where we got it, and now we did it today. So,
yeah.
Let me start with something that happened early on in your life.
Okay.
You told me earlier about a UFO sighting that you had when you were young. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. I had this when I was about 5 years old. And, it's funny because when I hear a lot of people on the radio shows saying their UFO experiences and how they remember them in this long stream as if a narrative. And that's not the way I remember it. I remember it in bits and fragments and pieces. So I don't know why, but that's the way I remember it.
You know what? I'm wondering
flashes.
if that has to be because maybe you were taken, because a lot of people that have been taken say that. Sometimes they don't remember it till a lot later, and when they do, it's bits and pieces of it.
Really? Now that's interesting because one flash is me seeing it from inside the house, and another is me looking up at it outside the house. I don't know how I got outside the house. So I think something went on. Well, let me tell you what happened. And it's interesting because I looked this up later and I found out that there was a big UFO flap in about the year 1965, which was when I would have seen this when I was about 5 years old.
Now that's also close to the Kecksburg incident, right? The years. Yeah, and it was in the 60s, early to mid 60s, I believe.
I wonder if there was a big flap in a lot of places, because this was in Edmonton, in sort of northern Canada, that this happened. And apparently I looked it up on the, they have a MUFON thing for British Columbia too, and I looked it up there, and there apparently were quite a few sightings I found out later of what I saw, which just blew me away. Like, because wait until you hear, Doc. You got to hear this.
Absolutely, I'm all ears.
When I was a little kid, like our house was sitting on at a bend in a corner, so that when you looked out the front living room window, you'd see the whole street going down. We're kind of at the corner, and which was fine. And I remember the vision of standing and looking out the window when I was a kid, holding this balloon, and way at the other end of the street, I see these. I see this in flashes, but way at the back of the far end, there's this craft that's above the houses, and it's like got lights, red and white lights going around it, and it's moving over the houses very, very slowly. And the thing that I remember too is that there was this being enveloped in absolute silence, And not only that, when this thing was moving down the street, I remember seeing people coming out of their houses and looking up at it, like out of their front doors kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
which is bizarre because, let me tell you later, is that no one remembered it but me, that this happened, or no one would talk about it after it's weird. Anyway, this thing came right above our house slowly, and I remember looking up at it with these lights blinking around it, and just as that happened, I think my father walked up because someone just immediately pushed me back and closed the blinds really quickly. And I guess it was like...
So he was protecting his daughter.
I think it was the moment that he saw it too, because I was sitting there frozen looking at it. And anyway, then I remember seeing it from the outside of the house, and it was dark, and there was lights going around it, and there were windows on that craft. And I could see figures sort of silhouette figures. You know, I didn't get a lot of, and I also remember I get this distinct feeling that there was someone in our house, and for me that is outside of time. Like I don't know where it fits into this sequence, but see how I remember things in sort of bits and flashes. I guess that's just how the memory works or whatever. But anyway, I remember these red lights blinking around, and my father had been in the Air Force, the Royal Canadian Air Force, and he had phoned up shortly afterwards and said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Oh, it's got to be just helicopters going in a circle." Well, it wasn't that, sort of thing. And anyway, that's kind of what I remember. But I also remember having a very strong feeling that these were really nice people, and that I did interact with them on some level. I don't know how. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. But anyway, the next thing I remember is that it's the next day, and everybody pretended as if nothing had happened. It's like I was the only one that sort of had these little blips of memory about it. You know, it's like, did you see that last night? And everybody would just stare at me. You know, even my family, my parents, they just stare at me like I was, nuts. Or like, what are you talking about? And no matter what, you ask them about it, and it was like they were blank, So that's the experience I had when I was 5.
Do you remember that Turkish footage where it actually was filmed, I believe, 3, maybe 2 years in a row? And I forget the name of the sea. Anyhow, Dr. Roger Lear was there. And when they zoomed up into this craft, and it was there for several hours until the sunrise, you see figures in there, specifically grays. Do you remember that?
Yeah. It's like it's got a bubble on top of it, and you see the sort of heads.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I know the one you're talking about.
The heads and the eyes. Yes.
That's freaky. Yeah.
It really is. It really, really is. I always thought, personally, the reason why it's able to be at the same place, same time of the year, is it's almost like, an old school TV channel controller, right? Where you just turn it to the right or the left. If they're using, time travel, right? And if they just are there 1 year and then they skip to the next year, just a turn of the knob, and boom, a year later they're in the same place. But to them, they didn't age a year or anything like that. Another thing was shown is that craft inside that craft that was enveloped in presumably gravity. It was shown because of people who'd done analysis on this. Richard Shaw, the late Richard Shaw was one of them, saw that there was a time dilation because these figures were moving in that craft so freaking fast that it's almost improbable.
That's what I remember about the silhouette figures. So very sort of quick, jerky motion, except when the one was in the house, it was all very frozen and calm. It's so weird, Doc. I mean, and it doesn't surprise me that there would be sort of a time dilation, but because I think these things are dimensional. They're extra dimensional. They're not from this physicality. I think that's why you get this really weird sense of silence all around you when you're encountering one of these, because you're just in another realm with them. Do you know?
Yes. And that's actually a freaky thing, because that goes to show that the technology they have is far, far greater than what we could fathom, especially, say, 50 years ago, when it was just presumed they had some technology to go from A to B really fast, instead of cutting through wormholes, which Einstein's theories talking about if you are able to affect a gravitational field, then you affect the space-time continuum. Therefore, they're not just going in a straight line from A to B. They merge A to B together with an Einstein-Rosen bridge, aka wormhole, and then just go from one to the other instantly.
You know what I'm going to do, Doc? I'm going to disagree with all of science.
Yes.
About that.
I'm totally with you.
I'm a little bit old school, and I've studied mysticism extensively all of my life. And what I came to understand is that, you don't physically travel between planets. It's not like you get into it just can't be done. Physically, it can't be done. I really strongly believe that there's so much to say here, but that the electromagnetic grid of our Earth and our DNA are so linked that if we go out past the moon, physically we begin to break down. Our DNA begins to break down. Our brain begins to break down, and so does our personality and our sanity. It all just starts to. I mean, the Earth is all we have. I don't think physical space travel is possible. And I know that sounds a bit odd, but I think these things are coming to see us dimensionally. And I think, as I've studied as a mystic, the way to do it is you go through the center of the Earth in order to leave this planet, and you do it with your astral body, so to speak, if that's the sort of common word for it. But you do it from a mystical point of view. You travel through the center of the Earth to leave the Earth. You have to.
Interesting. So are you suggesting also a hollow Earth if we're able to go to the center of the Earth?
Absolutely. Well, actually, at the center of the Earth, it's like a liquid blue crystal stuff that's sort of undulating, and there's a lot of water, much more water inside the Earth than people know. And then in order to leave the Earth, you have to go through that, out the other side, and then in order to leave the leave the solar system, you have to go through the center of the sun. And the center of the sun has a very ruby red center to it. It's like liquid crystal. It's weird. And when you do that, then you can leave the solar system. I believe that all UFOs come up from the ground because they have to come through the center of the Earth to get here. And that's how and that's why they're sort of, also that's where they disappear to. They go through bodies of water into cracks in the Earth to go through to the center. Yeah, I'm a little bit old school.
No, that's great. That's great because you know what, you're being able to apply your old school knowledge and everything in between from then to now, and combining all of that, I'm sure you've come across with several conclusions.
Oh yes, I have. I mean, I have no way to prove it or say that it's true or whatever, but I just know it because I've experienced it. I've traveled like that through the center of the Earth and outward. It's something that mystics do. It's a very ancient technology. It's the way people traveled to stars in ancient times. You know, a lot of times you hear that when they say, all these different cultures had beings that came from the sky and taught us stuff.
That's right.
Well,
every single civilization said that.
I think that what's going on there is that they're meeting up with teachers from other planes that actually, you meet up with their mystics, their high priests, or their people in their society that were adepts could do this and would do this. And they would gather information from around the different places. They would meet up with different beings from elsewhere. So in a way, yeah, we are getting, communications from the sky, from way up above. But it's done ethereally. It's done mystically. It's been something that's been done for thousands of years. It's the way space travel has always been done. It's the way space travel will always be done. We can't physically do it.
And that's what makes us so far behind, because they're using technologies that they seem to all use the same technology, the same way to travel, and we're like the babies, the new kids on the block.
Yeah, well, I don't think they're using a physical technology. I think that part of what it is that this is a thing of consciousness, and I think when we see a UFO, we're participating in it from a conscious point of view. It's a consciousness thing that's connecting with us. So what that means is it sort of explains why, in the 1,000 years ago they talked about chariots in the sky, because that's what they knew.
That's right.
That's what they saw. That's what they participated with.
They described things with the terms they knew then. Obviously, they didn't know about space shuttles. They didn't know about planes. They didn't know about rockets. The closest thing of transportation was a chariot back then. So a chariot in the sky, or chariot maybe that had some, propulsion like fire. Well, that's exactly how they're going to describe it back then.
I think it's even more than that. I think that's what they saw, because that's what their mind could conceive of. And there's a conscious communication going between you and the being from another realm. And, if you've noticed, even if you look at the last 20 years of UFOs, have you noticed they've gone through different technological changes? Like, remember when they had the UFOs that look like the big can openers that, they look like a spirograph thing with all this stuff sticking out, and then it went to triangles, and then and it seems to very closely follow our own technology. Do you know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's sort of a human concept, what we're seeing. I don't think that's what's going on at all. I think what we're seeing is a conscious emanation of something that's coming up through the center of the earth, and talking to us. And the only way it can talk to us is to have this visual picture. And what picture do we understand? Our own technology, things that we understand, right? So you're taking part in the experience, and that's why it changes from culture to culture, from time to time, different time scale, different time sequences and stuff. I think that when beings come through the sun and then they come through the earth, they actually are coming in. There's a semi-translucent, almost physical element that is surrounding them, and that's why it kind of looks like a saucer or a craft. It'll look like that because it's that shape, but it can change shape.
Yes.
It's like it's partially physical to be in this realm, but it's not really physically there.
There was a footage that came from Nevada. I believe it was in the late 80s, maybe possibly early 90s, but I'm not too sure. It was black and white, and what it did is it showed the craft continually changing shape.
Yeah. I had a remote viewing experience when I was remote viewing a craft under the water that changed shape. It was more shaped like a stingray when it was traveling, and when it got closer to going through a section of underneath the English Channel, it went into a rock crevice and into this huge tunnel, and it changed into a rounder shape, like you would see like a silver disc, So
let me ask you this. I've always assumed, and presumably so, that USOs are literally UFOs, because all they do is just travel from UFOs in the sky and USOs in the water. But either way, they're still exhibiting the same characteristics, same speed, same mode of travel, and the types of speed they're able to go underwater with that thick water, the resistance. It's almost impossible, because we cannot fire torpedoes that can even match their speed.
No, true. And think about it. If you have to go through the center of the Earth in order to exit the planet or enter the planet, the place to do it it's going to be easiest is in the water, because the water has come up from there's a crack down there somewhere that the water has come up from. And another thing too is a lot of people think that when how UFOs they look like they turn off nuclear plants.
Yes,
nuclear
like
government facilities.
That's right.
That's not what's going on there. They're searching. There'll be a light that comes down, and they're searching for an opening that they can get into the earth with, and they mistakenly come there because there's a big silo underneath there. There's a big hole, and they think it's a channel to get down.
I never
into the earth.
considered that. I always just assume what other people like Captain Salas said, that when he was there, Robert Salas, when he was at Malmstrom Air Force Base, that they were interfering with these nukes, ICBMs, because they are warning us to not fuck around with them.
No, far from it. What's going on is that they're searching, and they may try to travel down those openings in the earth that man has created with these big silos. And as they do, there's a reverberation of one dimension to another, and it'll make their equipment blink on and off.
There's a question for you already. This is, let me read it here. Let's see here. This is from Roseboy. Question for guest. Do UFOs coming through the center of the Earth cause earthquakes? Good question, actually.
No, they don't, because they're not coming through in a physical sense until they breach into until they come above the earth or the water. They're not sort of, it's, for instance, it also explains cattle mutilations. People are often, cattle mutilations are when a craft comes up, or a craft comes up from the earth, it phases into this reality. And if there's a cow or an animal or a human being or whatever standing nearby, it can get caught up in that phase. And that's why some soft tissue is sort of phased out. And that's why it looks like they're dropped from high above, is because they're just sort of swept up in this as this other dimensional thing is coming up through the earth and away. That's what cattle mutilations are.
I never even thought of it that way. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard the mainstream reason why there are cattle mutilations is because bovine blood is very similar to ours. And that's why they were taking them, because they didn't want to pay for them, which is a bullshit reason too.
Yeah, no. If they were doing scientific investigation, they'd maybe have to take one cow and that'd be it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. They would, just one, and not, thousands or even more than that? Enough to be a global phenomenon.
What's going on is also, it depends how much the animal can phase. They, for a moment, might see something from another realm, or even people around it might suddenly see something very bizarre. And this is, the UFO phenomenon is far more complicated than people know. Far more complicated. And it's been going on for thousands and thousands of years. It's how we travel. It's how we talk to all the other people out there.
Very true. Very true. Now, what do you say about people who say that ETs are literally time travelers, that are us in the future, say 55,000 years or whatever year it be, that are coming back here?
No, I think that I don't think so. I think, time is very relative. You're talking to an astrologer, so I understand lots of different levels of time. There's sidereal time, which is space time. And then there's planetary time, which is sort of, is measured in the constellations, the 12 constellations sort of around the Earth. And then there's the 12 seasons, which is sort of more psychological Earth time. So you've got all these different levels of time going on. It's very relative. It's not, when people think about time, there aren't aliens out there trying to trick time to get here. We're just trying to explain what we're seeing. And we think, oh, maybe they're from the future. Oh, like these kinds of things. And, that's the way you wonder about stuff, right? You come up with theories and ideas, and it's good to be curious. It's good to wonder. I mean, we have to figure these things out. But these are spiritual events. These are people coming to teach us, coming to interact with us, and coming to guide us. They may appear to be very unusual because we're afraid. If we aren't afraid when we see them, we might see a Nordic. If we are afraid, we might see one of those big bug ones.
Yeah, praying mantis type. That's right.
Yeah, much depends on our own consciousness, how we see them. It's an interaction. It's not just that thing is outside of me. It's very different than what people think. And I really believe that this is how it's done. I think if you think of the Earth, and if you think of humanity on the Earth as simply a part of nature, the way the Earth evolves is, having other people instruct us is part of how consciousness evolves. So it's like a natural phenomenon. Someday we'll help other people consciously evolve by traveling this way.
Agreed.
So it's a part of nature. It's the way it works. The way we look at this reality is so limited if we think of it as only physical. Physicality is a very slender, very slim slice of what is going on in reality. Very small.
Now, let's talk about the fact that we've been visited for so many thousands, if probably not millions of years. I've heard Linda Moulton Howe say we've been visited at least 250 million years.
Yep.
And they were coming here to terraform us to make way for our species. As if the dinosaurs were, in fact, another experiment like we are. Because back then, we had a higher, we had more heat, but more oxygen, which created the giganticism within dinosaurs. And so she claims that it wasn't a natural, comet. Maybe it was a comet or asteroid, but it was something that was, inflicted by them to destroy them, delete the big populace of the Earth and terraform it to make way for us, because we know now is not the same atmosphere as it was, say, 100 million years ago, let alone 250 million years ago.
We're always looking for very human explanations for these things, aren't we? I mean, I don't think it was anything like that. I think planets evolve. In fact, when I've been off planet, I'm going to talk weird for a minute, but I've seen them evolve. And what they do is that by the time a planet gets around to having one moon, that's when consciousness will develop on that planet in a very physical sense. And it'll be a much smaller planet. I think Earth used to be a lot smaller than it is now. And that's when the dinosaurs were there. That's when, big cats were there. That's when all the animals were really big, because that's what would happen. And I believe that at a certain point, probably about 26,000 years ago, the Earth suddenly grew bigger, and all this water came out from the inside of the Earth. That's what is known as what I think our myths tell us as the Great Flood, that kind of stuff, and I mean, it was a huge catastrophe, and I think it's a cycle that goes on. Planets evolve, they change, and as consciousness develops on the planet, it interacts with the planet, and they both change. So we're going through a very interesting time right now, too, for evolution. And, I think that's how the dinosaurs died out, is because, the whole planet got bigger, and they didn't have the right oxygen, and there was a flood, a huge flood, and I think a lot of things died out. I think it was wiped clean almost. Maybe a few remnants left over, but they died out quickly, too. I think lifespans were a lot longer back then.
Now, that's true. That's absolutely true. Now, let me ask you this. Are you able to see the different timelines of the future?
Some, yes.
Well, and what do you see for humanity? Are we going to, develop telepathy? Are we going to start terraforming Mars and go abroad? Or is our governments or private corporations going to show us the S4 craft, like the sports model? And, that I always say this, let's go hijack the sports model and take a ride in it.
Well, I think if you got past the moon, I think you'd get very sick very quickly. I don't think we can physically space travel. I think that's one of the biggest secrets and the biggest lies that NASA has ever put out. We can't go to Mars. The Earth is all we have, folks, and it's enough.
Do you think it's because of the the Kepler belt? Is that the proper term for it?
No, it's because our electromagnetic grid that surrounds the Earth and penetrates into the Earth and our DNA are very, very strongly linked. When we get out past the influence of our electromagnetic grid, our DNA doesn't hold up. And it's the same on any planet where there's life on it. They can't leave.
Now, what's your take on the moon landing, 1969? Do you think that happened? Because I know a huge chunk of Soviet, or now Russian, non-Soviet, but they're, under a new flag, but almost the same. They're not openly communist, but they're still like, I guess you could say, a one leader. Putin's not going to leave unless he leaves feet first, which means after he passes away, right?
Well, someone get those feet in the air and get him out.
Right? But the point being is that the majority of Russians don't believe we've ever been to the moon.
I think we've been to the moon, but I think we had help. I remember, there's a planetarium in Vancouver that I went and visited, and they have a lot of stuff from the Space 71 Space Apollo thing there, and they have a suit of the astronauts. They don't have the bubble helmet, but you can stand behind the suit and take a picture with your in a sort of they have a pretend helmet there, so you can look like you're an astronaut, and they have you look at the stuff that they use to go to the moon, and man, I can't imagine getting into something like that and having it work, going through a blazing fiery atmosphere, and we had to have had some help. Those suits that they wore were really kind of clothy and sort of cottony and rinky-dink. I don't know, I think we had some help. And I think that there are entities and beings on the moon that they don't want us to come back. If we try to, and the thing that also unnerves me too is that if you look up on the internet or anywhere mineral rights to the moon, you can see that all these people are trying to own the moon, Russia and the United States and all sorts of countries are trying to, and China especially, and
that's why we put our flag, the American flag, on there, to stake claim to the moon.
That's creepy, yeah. But the moon is so important in the sense of consciousness to this planet. People don't understand that, or they haven't come to understand that yet. That the cycle of the moon, if there's a sacred number that is 108, and that's actually 4 cycles of the moon. And if you start a certain kind of meditation at the absolute new moon, and you go around 4 cycles of the moon, you have a much higher level degree of being able to go up to another level of consciousness. It works like a clock. People don't understand that that's what's going on, is that the placement of the planet, the placement of the moon, the whole solar system is it's like a big nursery for conscious life. And when a planet evolves down to the right place, it shrinks down from being very, very big, gets very, very small, and then it goes through a lot of moons, and then it gets down to one moon, and then it gets big. The planet sort of bursts open and all the water will come up, or the fluids kind of stuff. And that's when consciousness will really start to develop on the planet.
I've heard some people say, Alex Collier, I believe was his name, from the 90s, said that the moon is a spacecraft. What do you say about that?
No, the moon came from the Earth. The Earth gave birth to the moon. It came from the Earth. It's part of the Earth. It just happened much, much longer ago than we think.
Now, this is always, I wondered why does the moon not rotate? Sure, it circles around the Earth, but we never get to see the dark side of the moon. That's
very interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting.
It's like a ballast. It's a ballast. It sort of runs the tides. It runs the energies as the planet as it goes around the planet. And the sun runs another level of energies as it travels as well, as we travel around it. So there's a kind of a mechanism that's going on. And only when that mechanism goes on, only when you have a moon, one solitary moon that is facing the Earth or facing a planet, then there's a certain level of interaction between the electromagnetic grids, the energies, and the DNA. And and then you start to develop different things on that planet. Okay? I know it sounds very unusual, but that's the way it works. You know, and there's also a dimensional quality to it. So there's actually lots of Earths. And scientists are just starting to figure this out, too, which I think is funny.
Do you mean the Goldilocks planets?
What does that mean, Goldilocks planets?
Planets that are exoplanets that are not too hot, not too cold, that have oxygen and water. Basically the stuff of life for us.
No, I'm talking about something quite different. There's cycles of time. And there's for instance, 2012, that was when the Earth split. This world split into two worlds. One world went into another dimension, and this world is continuing on in this dimension. That's how planets evolve. This planet, since 2012, well, actually since about 2013, will continue to de-evolve. That's why you're seeing, governments throughout the world act very. It's like everything's going backwards. It's a lot more violence. Everything is going sort of down. It's on a downward cycle. That's on this planet. The other planet is going higher. So there's a split that's gone about. This happens it's like, when the Mayans say the sixth cycle?
Yes.
That's what they mean. This is how planets evolve. This is how consciousness evolves on planets. And those people, a lot have stayed behind, that are still on this planet, that are going to the next world once they die. But, over the next few generations, total separation between the two worlds. And we will evolve on another planet.
Interesting.
I know it sounds
very
strange,
interesting.
But the universe works much differently than we think. Much differently. We only see a very slender part of it because we can't conceptualize it.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I've always wondered if humans, Homo sapiens or Homo noeticus, which is what the children, literally, I'm talking about born in the last 10, 15 years or, even 5 years, are much more intelligent, are using both sides of their brain more so than other people. They are the next iteration of us. For instance, we had Neanderthal, we had, Homo erectus, and a bunch of other different types of species before coming to us. Now, Bob Lazar says we've had, I believe, 63, I think he said, external corrections to make us what we are today, over 10,000, if not longer years. Yet, I'm wondering who is doing this? Who is controlling us? And what is the next iteration of humanity going to be? What kind of powers are we going to have? Now, for instance,
interesting.
You yourself, you can remote view. You're also a psychic. Is this something you were born with or something you learned?
Both. To tell you the truth, both. How to explain this? I think I've had an awful lot of past lives, and I think that I've accumulated a fair amount of wisdom. And I think in recent past lives, the last 3 or 4 past lives, I had quite high development spiritually. And really, and when it comes, I'm not saying anything to be arrogant here. I'm nothing special, really. I'm not. But a very highly realized Lama has recently acknowledged me as a tulku, which is someone that was highly realized in a past life and is born in this life that realized as a child. And that doesn't mean that I knew everything immediately from birth. Far, far from it. Far from it. But there was the potential there to absorb and learn things was at a different sort of level. And it's not that I'm above anybody, far, not at all like that. Everybody can be at this level. Everybody can be much further than me, you know? It's a process. So, yeah, I probably developed psychic abilities very young in life. I could really sense what people were feeling, and it's like I could see into things. And that grew as time went on, you know. Also, you know, when I was living in Edmonton,
Mm-hmm.
I started to have these awarenesses.
Northern Canada, BC, right?
In Northern Canada,
yeah.
As a young adult, as a young person. I was living there, and I was, you know, getting ready to go to do my undergraduate degree, start university,
mm-hmm.
and I started having these overwhelming feelings that I needed to go to Vancouver. I needed to go to the edge of the coast in Canada. Very strong, and I started to hear these energies and these words talking to me at night, you know, and this sort of voice, and this. It's like I was being.
Was it audible outside of your head, meaning like in the room or wherever you were, or like telepathy inside your head?
More like telepathy. More
okay.
like telepathy. It was like an inside thing. And I realized now that I was being guided and I was being taught to come, and I know who that voice was now, but I was being guided and taught to come to Vancouver, where a lot of my spiritual teachers are, and also where I could be trained from a mystical point of view to work with the earth grid energies and help move them. And because we're going through a very unique time right now, astrologically, or from an earth energy point of view, where this split has taken place. And, you know, it's just complicated. It's complicated. You need people at certain places. There's certain mystics that are known in certain ways, and there's 144 of them on the earth. And they're in charge of handling this grid, this mystical grid of energy that runs around the earth. And they're positioned at certain points. And you have to be drawn there. You have to be pulled there. You have to be trained nearby, kind of stuff. And it's your job, when the time is right, to move that energy in the earth as the earth is moving at a certain place in the solar system, in the 26,000 year cycle. I'm trying to explain this as a thumbnail sketch, but there's so much more to it that it's hard to explain. But yeah, that's what was going on. You know, I was being pulled towards this near where one of these grid points, a really strong grid point, was, and I began working mystically with a lot of tantric Tibetan teachers, and there you go.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up. That was something I meant to ask you. Can you tell us about Tantric Buddhism? What
Sure.
it is and where it came from, what it's based in, and what people believe?
Tantric, you know, people have a lot of misconceptions about Tantric. They think it's all sex. It's not. Because, you know, I don't know, they just had a lot of books about it back then, but Tantric is, you know, there's sort of A, B, and C, and, you know, A is like where you're walking towards enlightenment, and B is where you're maybe driving a car towards enlightenment. Well, Tantric is where you're on a rocket ship towards it. So it's sort of different levels of meditation, different levels of spiritual study, different levels of work that you're doing spiritually. And Tantric is a very hidden, very strong, powerful understanding of Buddhist doctrine, and it is also very involved in the study of mysticism, because mysticism is the study of power from within ourselves. And Tantric tells you how to tap into all those powers and energies and really utilize them. So Tantric Buddhism is very complicated. You have to do long, involved retreats. You have to do very, very involved meditation practices for long periods of time. It's very rigorous. It's extremely rigorous, and it's a form of Buddhism. It's a form of Buddhism. It's mostly followed by the Tibetans, and that's who I follow.
I've heard, well, not I've heard, I know this. Almost every religion is based on ETs coming from above and giving us wisdom, right? What do you say about Buddha? I mean, was he an ET or what? I mean, what made him be the starter of a religion?
You know what? He was just a guy, just a person like you and I, and he just decided that he wanted to find out the truth, find out the answers, and so he really worked at it, and he worked at it from inside, and he got there. He achieved it. And that's who he is. He is. There's different levels of enlightenment, and sort of, I guess, what you would call the highest level, or one of the highest ones, would be Buddhahood, and he's one of those. So he was just a person. Of course, he could perform all these miracles and stuff, because as you develop in levels of enlightenment, you also develop what are known as siddhis. It's qualities that we actually can all do, but as your consciousness is more developed, you can do them quite readily. Like Jesus would have had a lot of them. Being able to say, people would see him walk on water. People would see him open up his chest and they'd see inside. Stuff like this.
And even before Jesus, what about Moses parting the Red Seas?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. These things are not, uncommon in the ancient world. In ancient, the mystery schools, these were things that were very well known, and the adepts could all do them. In fact, when you were trained, the last part of your training is that you would go underground in an absolute black environment for like 3 days, and you'd have to find your way with no light or any sensation through all these crevices and tunnels and stuff, and you'd have to come out the other side only based on what you could sense. And in fact, in the Bible, when they say raising Lazarus from the dead, that's what they mean. He was coming out of that.
So he did die like the way we know to be dead, no pulse, nothing, and he was brought back to life.
No.
Okay.
No. He was actually underground. He was like a mystic or a trained adept, and when you go underground, it's said that you die. And when you come back up from underground, if you survive it, you're alive in a different way. So it's raising someone from the dead is like raising him coming out of that cave system.
Would you say raising the vibration?
It's a test. Yeah, it raises your vibration. It's a test. If you can pass that test, you can see with eyes that most people can't see with.
Now, what do you do for a living? What have you been doing?
Oh, God. I'm sorry, the Buddhist in me just...
It's okay. Hey, laughter is a good thing.
Yeah, what do I do for a living? Well, I'm an astrologer.
Okay.
I've also been a journalist and a writer. I've written a lot of columns and did a lot of freelance writing and that kind of stuff. Right now, I'm also a property manager for a condo, which is sort of my daytime job. And yeah, I'm an astrologer. I see a lot of clients.
Yeah, let's focus on the cool part, the astrology.
Okay.
How did you get into that, and what tools do you use? Tarot, other divination methods?
I started out very young. My first love was tarot.
Mm-hmm.
And I started reading tarot cards, I think when I was about 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there. They were given to me by someone that read my cards and thought I had a talent for it and gave me their deck of cards. And she was a very strange woman, but anyway.
What deck do you recommend for people? Because personally, I've come drawn to the Thoth Tarot. Even now, I can't say I'm good at tarot because every freaking card I have to go read in a book what the meaning is.
Yeah. I use the Aquarian deck, and it's just got a much lighter energy, and I find it works for me. different people will find different decks work. Different decks have sort of different energies. But for me, it's always been the Aquarian deck. I've been loyal. That's the first deck I ever got, and I still use it today. So I use a second version of it. That the guy that drew the Aquarian deck also drew a secondary deck. It's a beautiful deck. He did it all with felt pens. It's beautiful, and that's the deck I use. It's the Aquarian one.
What about the Ouija board? Do you dabble in that?
No, not really. I don't get into things like channeling and that kind of stuff because it's tough enough trying to channel myself.
Well, remember, I still
don't
have
trust
two
that stuff,
Ouija boards right behind me, and none of my friends or family or anybody within 50 miles that I know will even want to touch the board. And I know I have a book that focuses on do not use the Ouija board by yourself.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me. There's a lot out there that can attach to you, that can, energies can sort of become entangled with you. And if you invite them in, they will try to experience life through you. And you can become kind of possessed. I mean, these things are all very real. They're not, they're not just made up. These are, and some people think that the Ouija board is like a doorway. And you know what? I suppose it kind of is, but it's the intention. It's the intention that's the doorway. If you're not adept at what you're doing, don't dabble. Yes. You're just inviting in possible negativity, and that can get really out of hand very quickly.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I had a group of friends actually, who were using this in the mid-90s, a Ouija board. And, well, there's two stories. One of them, they were in a house, in a room, and once they started summoning whatever being they were talking to, the door slammed shut and it would not open. I mean, you have 15 to 17-year-olds screaming their ears off because, no, they couldn't get out of the damn room. And then other things started happening, like things started falling off the shelf. And then it got even more violent where things were being thrown at them. For instance, a glass of Coca-Cola, right? Literally lunged at them with like the velocity was like, wow, this must be a pitcher for the, Angels or the Dodgers or something like that.
Wow. You know what I would say? From a Buddhist point of view, someone in that room was really afraid and they were causing that to happen.
Ah, so it's their subconscious.
Yeah, the mind is much stronger than we know. Much stronger. That said, there are also entities out there that can attach to you, but it's much more subtle. And if they attach to you, it takes time for them to build into your system and sort of take you over. It's nothing as dramatic as that, But when people get very afraid and they have maybe some sort of underlying psychosis or whatever, or I shouldn't say that, but if they're very afraid and they're very powerful and they've got very strong, deep feelings, they can make things move around. It's all about when power is compacted improperly.
Then they can have
telekinesis. Yes. And if you notice, here's another thing. If you notice, like poltergeists, there's always a female teenager in the house.
That's true. You know what? I've never put one and one together, but that is absolutely true. That does happen.
And the reason that happens is that right around age 13, 14, prior to that, when you're a girl, you can be very powerful, you can be very giggly and all this sort of stuff and very free. Right around age 13 and 14, there becomes this tremendous pressure. You're just squelched. The whole society sort of squelches you, and you have to fit into a mold. And that really presses down on all our psychic energy. And some girls are very powerful, and they just don't react well.
Now, let me ask you something about this current technology, because I've been asking a few people, which I'm sure you heard about this, and I'm sorry to break off from topics to this
no problem
topic, but what do you know about this new quantum computer created by Google. I'm sure you heard me say that what they did is they took a math problem they took it to the world's strongest supercomputer, and it couldn't solve it. It would take 10,000 years. Yet this quantum computer
Hmm.
solved it in 200 seconds. Now that's kind of mind blowing. And I'm wondering, well, what is it going to do for us as humanity, globally, and also individually? What if down the line when they become cheap enough and we're not using a binary, PC or MacBook,
Hmm.
whatever it be, and we actually all have quantum computers? What the fuck is this going to do for us? Is it
You know
good?
what?
Is it something we
No.
should
Well,
worry about?
I don't think you need to be so worried because I think a lot of that is a sales pitch. If it were just a matter of speed and time to solve these problems, we would have solved them already. We've had lots of time, lots of minds working on things. Do you know? It's not the problems aren't solved simply by the speed of calculation.
No, you're
They're
absolutely
solved by
right.
ideas.
Yeah, yeah, but part of me wonders if this technology came from non-terrestrials or
Partly, I think it might
advanced
have.
ultra-terrestrials.
I think partly it might have. I think that the government and there's military sects that are very much in contact with off-world entities, and they are receiving information from them. I don't think they're receiving technology, but they're understanding how to go about some of these things, how to make sort of biological substance into electronics so that it can go faster. Like there are these kinds of things that are opening their minds to be able to do them. I don't think they're using them well. I think they're going to try and market them all and make them into something that really isn't going to do anybody much good. But
Hmm.
I think that's kind of what's going on. I don't think these computers, we're not creating a consciousness. That's not what's going on. Maybe it goes really fast and you can stack all those beans in one big pile really faster than I can, but that doesn't mean that you've created an idea.
Now, what's your take on AI? If you ask Siri if you have a iPhone or you just looked in Wikipedia, they
Hmm.
say the singularity, the technological singularity, is going to be present in 2045 because of Moore's Law. Every 18 months, technology doubles as far as the amount of memory it has. And
Hmm.
so, if we follow that, what is AI going to look like according to what you know?
Do you know what? I think it's going to be very ugly, and I think it's not going to actually work that way because I really feel that this Earth is kind of going to de-evolve. I think we've got lots of ideas about going with AI and new technologies, but I think there's going to be some tragedies that are going to affect humanity in the coming time. I think we're going to lose a lot of our population, and I don't think we're going to go. We have these aspirations with this technology, but I don't think we're going that way. Technology cannot take you further in a evolutionary sense at all. It can't.
Especially
And we
if
have
we're
this
not
illusion. We think it,
responsible,
yeah,
right?
right. And so we have this illusion or this hope or this, we believe in our technology that it's going to get us somewhere. It's going to change us. No, it's not. It's we have to change from inside.
I
That's how we make
definitely
progress.
agree with that. And it surprises me that only Elon Musk, as far as people who are involved in tech and multi-billionaire companies, if not trillion-dollar companies like in China, for instance, or Apple now here in the US, are
Hmm.
all messing with AI. Elon Musk gave an example where he said cars, for instance, right? It took
Hmm.
about 10 years to get regulations for seatbelts. 10 years. He said, with AI, we do not have 10 years. Once you let the genie out of the bottle, we are screwed. And then we have to worry about the fact that, well, what about Terminator 2? What if they were you know, right. What if we release this AI and all of a sudden they turn against us? You might have been around when I interviewed Father Jack Ashcraft, and he gave me two
Hmm.
instances of testing of AI, which really scared me. He said the first one, what happened was, is
Hmm.
the two individual computers created a language that was unknown to us, but known to the computer, so they can communicate to each other without us knowing what the hell they were saying. So they were hiding information from us. Then further testing showed that the computers, the AI, decided that we are inefficient, full of emotions, and therefore we need to be destroyed. And that's when they unplugged it. But they're still testing with this technology.
Do you know, it just strikes me as that this is the Frankenstein story. This is creating a monster. And human beings have, in their minds, created monsters for long periods of time. They have their fears, and they create these things. It's like that Star Trek episode with V'ger. you know, we have to destroy the creator, kind of stuff. I don't think that there was as much magic-y kind of stuff involved there. I think they're hyping up a lot of it. And I may be wrong. I could easily be wrong, but I don't think you can make a machine turn into a consciousness. I've studied spiritualism enough to know that you need an upright spine, and you need certain energy systems in the body to be able to move consciousness in certain ways. Machines are just bells and whistles. They have nothing whatsoever to do with intelligence. They're just calculators.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's what they were in the beginning, like a regular calculator, and which we know now, or even 10, 20 years ago, that the Apollo 11 Apollo 11 spaceship that had less technology than your standard
Hmm.
calculator, which would be, 8 times 3 equals, or 24 divided by 6 equals, etc. It's shocking to me that something that simple was more advanced the entire Apollo spaceship. And I
Hmm.
believe the number was it cost $2.5 billion for each launch. I'm talking about the creation of the building of it. We're not talking about the R&D, the building
Hmm.
of each of the Apollo ships and then the launching them. $2.5 billion. I don't know if that's calculated with money today or money
Yeah.
then, because if you count inflation from 1969 to now, 51 years ago, that's really high, really,
Yeah.
really high.
Yeah, they put a lot of resources into it. And I don't think they did it for reasons of research and study. I don't think they want to study space. I think they want to build a system around the planet where they can weaponize satellites, and they can weaponize, and they can farm the moon, and they can. I think that's really what their goal is. I don't think they did it for the altruistic reason of let's learn some stuff about space. I'm sure there's scientists out there, of course, that want to know all about space, and good for them, and I would too, of course. But that's not where the money came from. That's not where this is like a black project kind of a thing, if you want to call it that. And you know what, Doc? Don't let them make you feel so afraid about technology. Technology isn't as big and nasty and awful as they want you to believe. They want you to be afraid,
Of course, yes,
you know,
yes.
and they want to market to you too, so that if you're afraid and you get our product, then you'll be less
Then
afraid
you'll
because
be
you've got our
safe.
product.
That's right. That's right. It's all about
If,
money, right?
yeah.
There's a question for you. This is
Hmm.
from, let me make sure it doesn't erase or get timed out because more comments are coming in. This is from Jeff Banks. It says,
Hmm.
will AI and humans merge to create an elite psychic cyborg product?
Interesting question. Thanks for the question, Jeff. No, I don't think they're going to be able to put a consciousness into a manufactured being. I really don't think that's the direction it's going in. You know, I think only nature can do that. And we are so arrogant to think that we can mimic nature. I don't think so. At the end of the day, nature will win. I don't think that we're going to be able to place our minds into like an android and live forever, or marry ourselves to a machine and that put our consciousness there or whatever. I think this is just fantasy. I really do.
Let me ask you about this. Lies, essentially. In the book of Revelations, written by Apostle John in what's the city, or not city? It's an island off the coast of Greece.
Cyprus?
No.
No.
I think it's Pyros. I think it's. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's Pyros. He wrote the book of Revelations when he was blind, 90 years old, and alone in a cave.
Yeah.
And I believe it's the 6th edition, because papyrus back then didn't last very long for good reason, you know. It only lasted a few years before it had to be copied. So the oldest one goes back to circa 225 to 275 AD. And it's, like I said, in the British Museum. Well, everyone is scared of the number 666, but that's crap, because what was written in the Bible was 616. It got lost in translation. As a matter of fact, I had a credit card where the numbers included in the 16 digits were 666. And I had to call.
You devil, you.
Yeah, right? And I had to call the credit card for some reason or another. And when the lady, asked me for the number and I told her, she got scared. She goes, "That's the mark of the beast. Oh, I'm gonna give you a new card with a new number, no charge, no fee, nothing like that." And I was like, wow, this is this really, really affects people. But we do know after Greek, it went to Latin. It was translated to Latin, and then after that to English. Now, if everyone knows history out there, we all know that ancient Greek is responsible for all three of those languages, because
true.
Latin came from ancient Greek, and then all the Western languages, so English, German, Spanish, whatever.
All the Romantic languages came.
Every single one is literally from 100% Greek. See, people say that half the English language is modern Greek and the other half is Latin. But where did Latin come from? Ancient Greek.
Do you know what's interesting? I don't know why I'm thinking this, but that's, Jesus in the Bible, when he saw someone come to him and something written down in Greek, Latin, and Aramaic, he knew he was going to die soon.
Oh, wow. So a premonition.
Isn't that interesting? Pardon me?
A premonition he had.
Yeah, an enlightened person would know stuff like that. They would just know it. They would see markers. They would see things pointed out along the way. They can see into stuff.
Now, here's a question in the chat for you. This is from Lilith. Does Lasha have a prediction for the future of the latest coronavirus?
Interesting. Thank you for that question. When I first saw this virus come out, I knew this is a manufactured virus. This is a biological attack on China. I mean, my gosh, the thing was released in a very, very busy market, which was only steps away from a bus depot and an airport, the day before the most traveled day of the year in China. I mean, if you want to spread a virus, that's the best way to do it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have no illusions about this. This was an attack, and I think China knows it too.
What's ironic about this is I asked my pharmacist after this first came out, and he said this is a patented man-made virus.
I would bet. I would bet they've taken two things and they've spliced them together. This is a biological attack of some kind. This is going to they're trying to cripple the economy of China. And look what they've done. The whole place is shut up. Nobody's in the streets. Their economy is tanking.
Yeah. As a matter
Right?
of fact, they have or statues of fake people that look happy. So someone who was visiting China for vacation, and because everyone's told to stay indoors, and there's nobody on the streets, especially at the epicenter of the
Yeah.
virus, all you see are fake people. And I thought it was so hilarious. I guess
Yeah,
people are so
bizarre.
depressed, right, that they have to make fake people that look happy.
They're trying to make things look normal.
Yeah.
And you know another thing that bothers me about it is why are people dying so quickly? These are flu symptom type things. We've got
Mhm.
already, 3,000 people dead? We're only a couple of
Mhm.
weeks into this.
That's right. That's right. And
And no one seems to be talking about it. If they know what they can test for it in your blood, then they should know what it is genetically, and they should know that there's something that they can do for it. Why are people dying so quickly? What are they dying of? I mean, I don't think people died of the flu that quickly way back in that outbreak,
you,
back in the 19th century.
the Spanish flu, you mean? Or the
Yeah,
original flu, the influenza? Just because the
just that,
Spanish flu killed millions, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah. I think that this bug is going to kill thousands and thousands of people. I think it's going to build over now, and I think it's going to taper off over at about August. But I think it's going to kill a lot of people.
Another question for you. Has Lasha seen anything about who will win the upcoming American presidential election? This is from Mike Hunt.
Do you know that's very interesting because when you look at timelines, there's about 5 or 6 different timelines that are viable. There's thousands of timelines, but there's about 5 or 6 different ones that are going to become the reality, and it's like one will get picked. What I sense is coming up with this election is something quite different than I think we've seen before. I don't think there's going to be. I really have felt that the United States is going to be run by committee for a short time. There won't be a president. There'll be a committee, and as they rejigger their legal system or figure things out or rework the Constitution, I don't know what they're going to do, but it's not going to go to another president and that they'll just carry on like that. There's going to be an intermediate period where it's run in a very unusual way.
Interesting. Very
So yeah,
interesting,
and
because
I
that
would
would
think
be a breakdown. See, we're in six
I think
years
that's
from
4 years
now.
from now. I think that's after Trump.
In 6 years from now, it'll be 250 years since the Declaration of Independence. So
Right.
this will be a huge change because George Washington was president or ran for presidency, and he won unanimously in 1789. So
Mm.
we'd literally be changing, you know, it's a short time this country has compared to other countries as far as the
Hmm.
history of, I'm not talking about Native Americans, obviously. They've been here
No.
for
But you're right. The
thousands and
United
millions of
States,
years.
it's a baby compared to other
Infants.
cultures.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very infant country. The only other country that I know that's more infant than U.S. is Israel. They
Hmm.
was it 1947 or around there, somewhere. I remember Tel Aviv celebrated their
48.
48. Okay, 48.
Yeah.
Yeah, they celebrated their was it 70th anniversary in 2018.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's in terms of say Greece,
It was the
because we
67.
yeah,
It came into being in 67. Yeah.
very 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 short time. Anyway, I also wanted before I have something I want to ask you here, but before I get to that, I want to get your take. Let me pull up this image so people can see it on HARP. What do you think HARP is, and what do you think
Hmm.
it's doing to us?
Do you know, I think that they're controlling the weather with it. I think that they're heating up the atmosphere at the very high level, and they can control weather.
Yeah, well, they're
I think
doing
that's what they're trying to do.
good job because LA has been exceptionally hot to the point that it's really, really hard to live from spring to fall. Last year we were very lucky. I remember in summer it really never got over 100, 105, but in
Hmm.
2018, routinely we'd have 110, 112, and the highest temperature ever recorded was 118 degrees. Now that is
Mm.
unbearable. You could have every air
Yeah.
conditioning you have running at the lowest temperature and you're still going to be sweaty because the heat is so bad. And talk about dehydration. You
Oh,
go
yeah.
outside, you can't walk, without literally dehydrating. You could have as much fluids as you want and take them, which is you need to if you're sweating that badly. But at the same time, I know a lot of people die from heat stroke.
Our environment will just kill you if it's out of balance.
Yes.
You know, it'll just kill you. I'm living in northern Canada, and I respect the environment. You go outside in winter in northern, and it'll just kill you.
Cold
No
wise,
ifs,
you
ands,
mean,
or
right?
about, just kill you. You know, like it
Yeah.
doesn't care. It'll just kill you.
But-
You know?
Because it's that
But you
cold, right?
know, one thing that we have to realize too is that we're at the end of a cycle that's known as the Great Year astrologically. And what that means is every 26,000 years we go through a certain area of the cosmos that, basically the temperature is changing on all the planets in our solar system, not just ours.
Interesting.
I think there's a lot that's changing. And as we go through this area, I don't think that HARP is trying to control that. I think it's trying to threaten other nations with it. I think it's, trying to control weather for military reasons. I think it's, that earthquake in Haiti, I'm sorry, that wasn't natural. That big, huge earthquake in Haiti. There's certain things that just don't make sense.
Yes, that's true. It a lot of things don't make sense, and that's very freaky because we are a species that want to know everything. Now, there's a question here from Pam Brettenberg, who is my social media manager. It reads, "Does Lasha have any healing powers?" Oh, and if you do, by the way, this is my extra add-on. Heal me.
Oh my. Healing powers. Not in the way that you would think. Not in the sense of Reiki or that kind of stuff. But I do influence the energy around people and it calms them down greatly. I wouldn't call that healing, I suppose, but no, I don't have physical healing powers. I can sense things medically. I actually have a lot of clients that are doctors that come to me because they can't diagnose someone, and they have me sort of zone in on it and find out what's really going on in their bodies. I can see it. I can sense it. I can tell you what would help it, but I can't sort of, move that energy from my body and make it happen.
Well, a lot of Western medicine, as much as they're creating new medications and charging an arm and a leg, is not
Yeah.
the proper way. Only sure you can take some pills for some certain, symptoms, but Eastern medicine, I think the combination of Eastern and Western medicine is the best way to go. And if you try to bring up Eastern medicine to any doctor here in the West, in America, especially in LA, Beverly Hills, that area, they get super offended because they know it all.
Right. Right.
There's another
Right.
question for you here. Let me find it. Um, this is Aaron Johnson. Does Lasha use tropical astrology?
I use the Koch house system of when I'm drawing up charts, and I sometimes will use sidereal time. But yeah, I do. I use the basic sort of Western astrology.
Now, another question for you. This is Ben Trotman. Do crystals have real healing powers?
Yes, and they also hold memory and consciousness. They are the highest evolution of the mineral world. They're sort of the highest level that the minerals developed before they became plant-like, and consciousness went up that level. So they have healing powers. They can move energy. They can clean you. They can cleanse you. But they don't have like a consciousness. That's not what they have.
Now, there's something I meant to ask you for the last hour and a half plus.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be, again, breaking the chain of conversation. But what's your take on planet Betelgeuse?
Oh, Betelgeuse, yeah.
Betelgeuse, yes.
Yeah, that. Well, on the movie they called it Beetlejuice. Betelgeuse is a giant red.
Dwarf? No.
It's a giant. It's a red giant planet.
Okay.
And it is in the constellation of Orion. It's sort of like if you look up the left shoulder of Orion. You know that in that constellation where you see the three stars that are really, it's like Orion's belt. If you go up a little further, you're going to see where his shoulder would be. That's Betelgeuse. It's huge. That planet is huge. It would encompass most of our solar system if we put it in our solar system. Now, I know recently it's been saying that it is changing. And they're all weirded out because it's only part of it is changing. And they don't know why that's going on. Well, planets evolve. Like, you have to remember that sometimes a planet will turn inside out as it evolves, as it goes to a next stage of evolution. I think that's what's going on with this. It's a natural phenomenon, what's going on. There's not, aliens or something doing it. Mm-hmm. This is the planet evolving. It's changing. It's getting looser a structure, and it's going to be getting to be a smaller planet, and it's basically going to look like it turns inside out, and then it's going to stabilize.
Now, here is a question in the chat, not related to that because this was written as I was asking you about Betelgeuse. Mm-hmm. It's from Richard Graper. It says, what is a boomer coomer?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I don't know that term.
That makes two of us.
It's something silly, I would bet. It sounds silly.
Yeah. Now, so we're in 2020. Do you think we're heading towards an extinction level event again?
Yes. Well, I think a de-evolution. I think I think we're going to lose a lot of our population. I think. I don't think we're going to go extinct, but I think we're going back to very, very severe times. That will take a couple of 100 years. It's not going to happen overnight. But you'll see humanity become more animalistic and more kind of de-evolving.
I'm sure you heard the term 7 days to animal. Have you?
7 days to what?
Animal.
No, I haven't.
What it means is once we have, say, like a massive earthquake, which we have a lot of them here in LA, or California in general, is that after 7 days of no power, no water, nothing, once we start running out of food, 7 days after that, people will become animals as far as killing people for a can of peaches or, a 6-pack of soda or anything to stay alive. People will really come back down to being like, very, very mean because, it actually fits the model of people as far as, or nature of, survival of the fittest.
But I don't think so. I think this is another fear story because hundreds of years ago when we didn't have all this manufacturing, people had to rely on each other in small towns in order to get by. people are better than you think.
That's
Like
true.
I remember someone saying to me, well, we have to protect ourselves because some natural disaster could happen, and then Russia's going to come in and take over our country. Like if we're vulnerable, we're going to get attacked. And I thought, wait a minute, remember that big tsunami in Japan?
Mm-hmm.
The whole
The one
country was
that caused
torn down,
Fukushima.
and people didn't
Yeah.
rush in there and try and take the country over. They rushed in there with blankets to help.
That's true. That's true. Same thing with Haiti.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some truly evil people and beings in this world that are always trying to destroy it. But I think humanity has a bigger heart than that.
Well, that goes to say, the 10% rule. 10% are super, super nice, and 10% are super evil. No matter what,
Hmm.
you're always going to have that balance of light and darkness. And I don't think anything we can do will cause those evil people to turn good. Now, sure, there are people who've made mistakes, gone to prison, and come out being extremely nice, recognizing their mistakes. Other people are literally sociopaths. And it's kind of
Yeah.
scary because, we don't know if they're our next door neighbor until they have some sort of episode or something goes wrong, like a natural disaster, where instead of coming with blankets and food and medicine, they will come with bullets.
Mm. Do you know? I don't. I'm not as afraid of people that way. I'm not as afraid of. And a lot of it has to do with people's spiritual constitution. Some people can go through horrible things in life. They can go through Auschwitz, for God's sakes,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't change them.
That's
And
true.
other people can go through something little tiny and they go evil. It has to do with your spiritual constitution, how developed you are, how evolved you are. And I really think that it's pretty easy to recognize the people that are evolved in a crisis.
My friend's grandparents, who have passed away in the last 15 years, were
Mm.
prisoners in Auschwitz to the point
Oh
that they
my.
had the serial numbers tattooed on their arm. And they are the kindest people, and they lost a lot of their family. Now,
Right.
they were too young to be married in Auschwitz or before the World War II broke out, but you know,
Hmm.
years later, maybe a decade or two later, they got together somewhere and married. And I believe they married here in the United States after World War II. But it
Nice.
just goes to show that when you have such horrific times, that some people, like you said, will be very, very nice and count their
True.
blessings and not their misgivings.
True. I think whenever there's an intense lesson, it's learned in a. See, this is what Tantra is, too. It's about life being extremely intense. This is what they say the saints go through, too, is that when the closer you get to spiritual, well, the way they say it, the closer you get to God, the stronger the demons are.
That's
And that
true.
that you're you get these trials and tribulations that come at you, and they're horrific, but they're a test, and people that are evolved can get through them. Actually, it gets easier and easier. People that aren't evolved, they get don't get their cupcake at lunch, and they go evil. Like it's all about where you are in your journey. Where you are spiritually, and so a lot of people that made it through Auschwitz and made it through all that horrific stuff and are still human beings. I'm impressed with that.
Me
That's
too. Me
impressive.
too. Absolutely. There's
Hmm.
another question for you here. This is a very interesting question because I've never really touched on this, and me personally, I've always wanted to know what the hell's going on. This is from Catherine Frank. It says, "What are the metallic trumpet boom sounds?" Or
Hmm.
wait, what are the metallic trumpet sounds, booms? Wait a minute, wait. I think it should say
I know what
where.
she means. The booming
Where
sounds.
are the metallic trumpet boom sounds from? I'm paraphrasing there.
Right. Thanks for the
What are
question.
they? Let's split it into two. What are they, and where are they coming from? And a third question: why are they coming now?
Right. What are these things, and what are they? You know what? They're coming from the Earth, and they're coming from the electromagnetic sphere around the Earth as it moves and changes. And this system is evolving. There's great big cranking going on inside the Earth. And I think that's where the myth comes from, that, at the end of times you're going to hear trumpets and stuff, because it's the end of a cycle. As we go through this place in space, which we go through every 26,000 years, there's tremendously different pressures on our solar system and on our planet. And also it's a chance for us to evolve higher. And the Earth is changing from the inside out.
When you
and so
say
you're hearing grinding
26,000
going on.
years, are you talking about like a different age, like the age of Aquarius or things like that?
The age of Aquarius won't actually happen until 2150 or so, but it started about 40 years ago.
Okay, so it's not 26,000 years. We're talking pretty short.
What's known as it takes our sun 26,000 years to go around our galaxy. That's what the great cycle is. Okay, and as we do, like if you think of the, most people think of the galaxy like a record player, like a record, and you think of Earth as way out on the edge, and we go up and down. We go above that plane, we go below that plane, we go above that plane. We do this all the way along. Well, right now we're at a position where we're at the same time going above that plane, and at the same time we're facing directly to the center of our galaxy, which is that 26-year cycle, and there's this tremendous energy coming at us, and it helps planets evolve. It helps consciousness evolve. The Earth is changing. The Earth is preparing to bring us to a higher level. Those that will go to that level and those that will go to another level will be staying on this one planet, one version of Earth.
Are you referring to changing as far as the vibrations? Because if we have
Yes.
low vibrations or low frequencies, we're not going to go anywhere.
The electromagnetic grid of this Earth controls what level of consciousness there is on the Earth.
Gotcha.
So when it changes, we can conceptualize more. We can go to different levels of consciousness.
Another question from you. This is from Aaron Johnson. Does Lasha think there will be a pole shift? Very good question, actually.
Actually, yeah, I think it's going to be very much like that. There's going to be a tremendous, last time, I'm going to go with my instinct here. Last time when it was the flood, when the Earth got bigger and the Great Flood happened, I think
you're talking about the Great Flood that was in all biblical texts from like Noah and other religions, right?
Right. The great deluge, as they call it. I think this next cycle is going to be more around fire, more around heat, and it's not going to be I think there will be a pole shift. I don't think we're going to shift that much. A little bit. I think we'll still have our seasons, but I think as it shifts, it's in the Bible they talk about wormwood.
Well, I know wormwood because of the drink, absinthe.
Right. Well, that's exactly. What wormwood, I think, is, in my opinion, is channels from inside the Earth where lava come up. And the Earth is going to have these channels where a lot of new continents and new Earth, new ground is developed, and a lot of the water will go away on Earth, and a lot of the lava will come. It'll be like wormwood, like wormholes in wood. It's not people think wormwood is this planet coming at us, like Planet X. No, wormwood is something the Earth will go through. It'll be a time when the electromagnetic grid changes so dramatically that the Earth will spasm and will have these, and it will be a partial pole shift, and then it'll crack in different places. First that you're going to see is a lot of black oily substance start coming up from the ground, and also sustained balls of lightning coming down from the sky. And what's going to happen is, in the Bible, geez, I'm talking very biblically tonight. In the Bible, when they talk about Judgment Day, when the living will be jealous of the dead, it's because as the electromagnetic grid changes, we're going to be able to see all those other realms. We're going to see the dead people. And they're not going to suffer because they don't have bodies. We do.
I see. But we also have our ethereal bodies too, right?
True, yeah.
How do you explain that? Is it just to us, as far as people who live on the planet, human beings, not including ultra-terrestrials, or does this also count to, say, wolves or birds or whatever it be? Do they also have ethereal bodies?
Yeah, everything that's sentient has several different bodies and a soul. Every being that has consciousness has all that stuff in it. And we don't just have one body. We have like about 5 bodies. We have our subtle physical body. We have our spirit body. We have our light body. We have a lot of different things. We see the physical body. That's what we see. We physically perceive. But there's a lot more going on in the human makeup and in the animal makeup and everything, Anything that's conscious is very complicated and has several bodies.
Interesting, very interesting. Now, let's just say hypothetically, how many bodies would I have?
5.
Huh.
6 if you go out for bingo on Tuesday. No. Sorry.
Are you talking about me being in other dimensions?
No. Well, partially. You have a network of chakras in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And people think like they have the 7 chakras. There's actually a lot more that go up outside the body. But also within the body, you have a subtle physical body that has hundreds of chakras in your body in different places. Energy points, junction points, where magnetic energies connect, where electricity energies connect, where the nerves connect. Like the most powerful and sensitive chakra on your body is the tip of your tongue. The very powerful chakra there.
Ah.
And so there's a network of energies that work on different levels in your body. And you have these kind of nerve shafts that go up either side of the spine. When you see the medical symbol where they have the 2 snakes going up?
Yes.
That's a depiction of the Ida and Shoshona system on either side of the Shoshona. There's 2 nerve shafts that go up. And if you raise your energy through those, if you learn how to move your energy through those chakras in certain meditative techniques, and you can get up past the brow chakra, which is a very difficult thing to do, and go above and out of your body to chakras that are higher and throughout the cosmos. This is part of the body system that you're using in order to evolve. Now, I know I'm hitting you with a lot of ancient wisdom here.
No, again, this is things that I've always wondered, and I'm glad you're telling me this. I was just thinking this myself. You know so much, Lasha. I'm so happy to know you and always talk to you because you always fill me in on stuff that I question, but you seem to be paying attention and have been paying attention for decades, literally.
Mm-hmm.
UFO sighting, that was 55 years ago, right?
Yep.
And each year you're just getting wiser and absorbing so much more information. You're able to comment on just about, no, not just about, on everything. And that's fucking cool.
Well, thank you so much, Doc. I've always been a truth seeker. I've always been on that quest. And it's not something that I've sat down and decided I wanted to do. It's just who I am. It's who I was in past lives, and it's who I'm going to be in future lives.
Yes.
So it's just a sort of continuation. And, I have no illusions about it. That in a blink you can be dead.
That's true. That's true.
It's what you can take with you is your spiritual knowledge. That's the only thing you can take with you.
Now, wait a minute. I think there is something else here. Hold on a second. Another question for you. Let me make sure I can scroll it to it without losing it. Okay. Tyler Moody. When our pets pass on, do they ever come back without their bodies to visit us?
All the time. All the time. Well, a part of them comes back. They don't. It's not all of them that comes back, and it's the same thing with consciousness from someone that you might know.
Is it because
they
of
have
the
actually moved on,
connection
but
to
a part
us?
the part of them that you're connected to is always with you, and that does come back. I used to have a cat. His name was Gable. Loved him. Like, he was just so wonderful. And when he died, I kept having this experience. You feel him jump on the bed, and also I would have, if I'm wearing shorts and I'm in the kitchen doing something, and the cold nose on your shin, it's an unmistakable feeling. It was him, and he would keep doing that from time to time to let me know he was there. Of course they come back. Of course they do. You're going to see them when you pass over.
And you know what? I bet that's because of like you said, our connection to them, especially dogs, which seem to be so super loyal and protective of us. A lot of people, I know, and I didn't believe this at first until I started talking with several people about this, who sole life or profession was to be a pet psychic. They
Oh,
would,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, they would literally talk to the person who was grieving over their lost pet, and would connect their pet, their lost pet, with her from their ethereal realm to them, to let them know that they're still around, their spirit is still around.
Absolutely. I saw some really interesting shows on YouTube, or little videos on YouTube about a woman. I can't remember her name, but she used to do psychic connection or medium connection to the big cats like tigers and panthers and stuff like that. And it was fascinating. They did a documentary on her, and the things that she sensed from them and the way she communicated with them was just beautiful. It was beautiful. Animals don't have the complications that we do.
Yeah.
We're just about crazy.
That's
compared
right.
to them.
That's right. And materialistic. See, they don't have to worry about that. You just feed them and give them some love, and off they go. They're happy.
They're all heart.
They're all
heart.
are. Yeah. And it's proven that having a pet makes a person live longer. That's a fact.
True.
Yeah.
True, because it's an honest connection.
Now,
it's
let me
trustworthy.
ask you your opinion on the secret space program that some people talk about. Do you believe there is a secret space program? Because earlier you mentioned that we can't go to Mars, and hence, therefore, why would we have a secret space program if we can't go further than the moon, right?
Right. I don't think there's a secret space program. I think what there is an espionage program pretending to be a space program to intimidate other governments into thinking that we have better technology than them. I think a lot of it is a psyop that started in the Cold War.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a lot of where it comes from. And I really don't think that we can go to other planets. And I think NASA knows that. Or maybe not everyone on the front of NASA. I think the powers that be at NASA know that, and the military knows that. And I think all else is grist for the mill to use as spying, espionage elements against other governments. I think that's a lot of what this Blue Book, Blue Book, that thing that they had in the 50s, Project Blue Book.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that was, you think about the word Blue Book, it's something that you have it's a designing term, right? You have a blue book for something that you design. I think they were going around talking to people that had seen these UFO things, seeing these spiritual experiences, and figuring out a way that they could use them to look like they had all this technology, so that they could scare Russia into thinking that they had all this talk. They had better than them.
So the Cold War wouldn't turn into a hot war, a real war,
It was
right?
a fear tactic. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
fear tactic.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of it. I think that on some level works. I think it was a psychological warfare in a way.
Well,
And
in
I think they were using
psychological
our
warfare, at least you don't have to use bullets.
true.
So
But you
that
also,
works out to us.
I mean,
But
I'd
you
rather
do
be
mess
shot by
with
a
people's
bullet than a
heads,
lie.
right? Yeah, yeah,
At
exactly.
least you can deal with a bullet physically. With a lie, it's much more insidious.
Well, especially if it gets into you and you start questioning yourself. I mean, it could turn someone literally lose their sanity.
Or make them be very afraid, which is what they want.
Yeah, yeah.
If we're very, very afraid, we don't evolve.
That's a very very scary thing to think about, that we don't evolve because of the fear, but yet we see it all the time. We really do, and that's why people defect from countries that they fear, or that they fear their country is targeting them for whatever reason through psyop tactics.
Right. And it sort of warms my heart too, because it proves that fear can't control you. These people are escaping that system of fear because they recognize it, they see it, and they run from it. This is a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. And
You know?
I believe the psyop tactics started around after World War II, unless you know any different. Were they around prior to?
I think prior to, yeah, I think during World War II they were fast at it. I think Hitler had a lot more secret psyop programs that were going on, and he built a lot of those around mystical things, which is frightening.
Yeah, and apparently he was very huge into astrology.
hmm
I think it was Heinrich Himmler that went
Yeah.
to England and got caught. He flew there on his own plane, on a plane by
Oh, that
himself.
was Ness. Herman
Ness.
Ness, I
Okay,
think.
yes, Rudolf Ness. Yes. The point being is they planned, when they were going to attack, when their
hmm
astrology, or when the time based on astrology told them to do so. And Aleister Crowley, he was a double agent. He was an
Yeah.
Englishman, and evidence has now come forth that he worked for MI6 because he had such access to the higher echelon of the Nazi Party. He would routinely go there and meet with these people,
I'm
from
sure.
Hitler
Yeah.
to Hess to Himmler to Goering, and that brought valuable information back to the Allies.
Yeah, in a cloak of fear. I think Aleister Crowley was a very twisted, negative individual, and yeah, it's pretty sad.
Here's another one for you. This is Tammy George. She
hmm
says, that's why the Bible was changed to put fear into humans. What do you say about that?
Oh,
I
you
agree.
have no. It was changed so many times. There's 13 signs of the zodiac, and that was changed by, I think it was Pope Philip or something way back when. I don't think it was the Council of Nicaea. I think it was before then that they changed that in the Bible, and in all literature they got rid of the 13th sign and said it's the sign of the witch, it's the sign of the evil. But what it was is that's the section between Sagittarius and Scorpio. See, Sagittarius, the symbol of Sagittarius is the guy holding back the arrow. He's about to let go of an arrow.
Spear or arrow? That's right. He's holding a bow and arrow, right? And he's
Well,
half man, half
if
horse.
you look at that constellation, and if you were to let go of that arrow, it would point exactly to the center of the universe. That's what they didn't want you to know. So they
Well,
got rid of that sign.
I'm a Sag, actually. So that's
Yeah.
interesting for me to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
Now,
yeah.
let
hmm
me ask you, what other topics do you want to cover before we close up?
Gee, I don't know. Anything you'd like. I think we've covered a lot of ground.
We have, and that's why I love
Yeah.
talking to you, because you know so much.
I'm
Okay,
nothing special. I really am not. I can jump from one thing to another because I'm a Gemini.
see, you're humble, but that's what makes you great.
Well, no, yeah. I hope so. I'm learning.
Ah,
I'm
trust
learning.
me,
I'm
you
learning.
are. You are.
Well,
Okay, here's another one for you. This is Aaron Johnson. What are Lasha's thoughts on Stargates? Ooh, interesting.
that's interesting. There are places on the Earth that you can connect to other places in the universe. And they're vibrational. They are very tuned into a lot of the electromagnetics of the Earth, and they're in certain places. They'll be very close to what we would consider a chakra point on the Earth. And for instance, there's one in, I think it's Peru.
There's
There's
also
this
one,
wall.
I believe, in Iraq, a natural
Could be.
Stargate.
You see, this is where the story of Open Sesame came from. This is where that story came from, because there are places where you can say certain words in certain tones, in certain vibrations, and it'll change so that you can travel to a different realm through that rock or that piece of specialized granite, you know? There are places like that on the Earth, and I think a lot of cultures have left that way. I think there are doorways on the Earth that will take you elsewhere.
Yes, yes. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if they take us to another time on Earth or another dimension
Hmm.
on Earth.
Yep, time is not linear. It's not linear. It happens all at once. You know, when you reach certain
Yes.
levels of spiritual movement, you can go back in your memories and look at a memory, and you can pull back a little bit and you can see everything that's going on around you that you didn't see when you were there.
Yes. Yes.
You know, it's quite something. The mind is a lot more powerful than people think.
I
It's a lot more
know.
yeah,
And once we start actually being able to access most of, if not all of it, then we really will see how powerful we really are.
true. And you know, the thing about power is that it's not outside of us, it's inside of us. And the thing is, the only way to have power is to let it go. You know,
Yes.
it's not about having power over something or being more powerful or being bigger and badder and this kind of stuff. The truth, my friends, is so big and so simple that we don't see it. That's where the power is. Finding the truth.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
Now, back to Aaron Johnson's question about the Stargates. There's a follow-up, and it just says the missing 411 question mark. I'm sure you know about missing 411, right? A
Hmm.
a lot of people, thousands, if not tens of thousands. I don't know if it's gotten to the millions yet, but people seem to just disappear.
Hmm. Yeah. I think there may be lots of reasons for that, but I think what's going on is, remember I told you that in order to travel through the Earth, you have to come through the center? There's various crevices that come up, and sometimes there will be a little bubble of energy, and I think those people are just, you know, taken into another dimension. It must be terribly frightening for them. It must be horrible, but that's, I think, what happens is some of them might go just under the Earth a bit in another dimension. They might not know where they are, and they're just, or there could be a time slip where they're suddenly farther away from where they started. I think there's a lot of things that go on that people are very unaware of. You know, like we don't really conceptualize it because we think of the Earth as just a solid rock. It's not. It's a living entity.
Yeah, the third rock from the sun. That's right. And it is the living entity.
Hmm.
Gaia, Mother Earth.
Yeah. Yeah, and
And the trees and all the plants can be considered the living Earth's lungs.
you know, it's very interesting. The Buddha, when he attained enlightenment, he was sitting under a tree. You know, you always see that image of him sitting under a tree and meditating. You know, that's a
Hmm.
famous image. Well, in higher levels of meditation, you have to go and sit at the base of a tree because trees will cleanse you. The energy that comes up from their roots and goes up the tree and out into the air moves energy up your chakra system, and it actually cleanses you and calms you. It helps at a certain level of development. So that even the trees are important.
I agree. I definitely agree. And, us with the deforestation is not helpful to us at all. We need trees to convert CO2 to oxygen for us to breathe.
Absolutely, absolutely. The trees. I think a tree is a very complicated thing to develop. I mean, it's amazing to me that nature has developed a tree. I mean, what a machine that thing is.
Yes.
It keeps the planet alive. It's like the planet's nervous system, in a way. It sort of is. It's quite remarkable.
Couple more questions here. This is Pam Vrettenberg. She reads, does Lasha prep?
You mean like prep for the end times kind of stuff? No, because I'm not so attached to the material. If something's going to come along and kill my body, let it.
Yeah,
there'll be another life.
I'm the same way, knock on wood, as long as I'm not suffering for months on end, say with cancer or anything like that. I'd rather take a bullet to the head than, or something else like that. But
I know what she means. She means she's wondering if there's going to be disasters. Do I prepare for them and stuff? And I think people should. I think that's wise, so you can feel a little bit more secure. But realize, too, that a good way of preparing is really connecting in with people that you know, because you're not going to get through that disaster like that alone.
Speaking of preparations, I have one of those prep packs for, they label it for earthquakes, but it's basically for anything. It has water, it has a filtration straw, it has a whistle, it has glow sticks, ton of stuff. But I'm sure everyone out there knows, especially people who live in places that are very prone to earthquakes or hurricanes or tsunamis or tidal waves or even tornadoes. There's a lot of
listen, we have physical bodies. We have to take care of them.
That's right.
A very highly realized Lama once, I asked him a question. I said, what's the most important question you can ask yourself every day? And here I thought he would give me some big, long spiritual answer. And he thought for a minute, and he said, where am I going to sleep tonight? You take care of the body first. That's the realm we're in. We're in the physical realm. So yeah, prepare for stuff, but realize that there's much, much more to you than that. You may go through things physically, all that kind of stuff, but that's very little to what you are. That's just a part of it.
Another question, I think this is the final one. I'm getting caught up here. This is Jay Crapper. Do these rifts align with ley lines or power areas on the Earth? Also, hi, Lasha.
Hi. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. It's a very complicated grid, and it's where you'll see a lot of a lot of large structures. Churches were often built along these lines. Spiritual places where people would study were often built along them. I mean, you've all seen the things on the History Channel about the ley lines and stuff, and yeah, they're very connected to that. It's just that it also goes deeply within the Earth, and every so often, the certain types of mystics are asked to change those grids, and that's what they do. That's what we do. We change them because humanity is moving to another level.
Yes.
And it's been going on for many, many lifetimes, and it'll be going on in many, many in the future.
And, I think more people are starting to be open to this as opposed to, say, the 1950s where they did not believe in anything. They would throw you in asylums, insane asylums, if you drifted away from what the mainstream wanted you to believe, which was, if you can't see it, you can't handle it. If it doesn't fit with our physics, if it doesn't fit with our
Right.
religions, then you're a cuckoo.
Right.
But that
If
doesn't
anybody
exist
asks you to
anymore.
believe something and they want you to control you, run as far away from it as you can. you know, if it creates fear, and if it doesn't empower you in the sense of make you aware of things and take control of your own life and your own mind, then it's worthless. It's someone trying to make you have fear, especially, government systems and religious organizations and all sorts of things, even scientists, trying to make you have fear. Don't buy it. Don't buy what they're selling. It's not worth it.
Very well said. Now, I'm going to ask you after to stay on for a couple moments till after so I could talk to you
Sure.
briefly. And let me cram a couple things in for you. First, if you had a final statement, what would it be? And then also tell people about your website and where they could find you and anything else you want to fit in.
Sure. I have a website called mysticstars.net where I have astrology columns on there. And there's also sort of fun things you can go and look at and do there. I've done that for a lot of years. What I say as a final thing? Listen to your heart. The mind is not in the brain, it's in the chest.
I
Find
like
it.
that actually a lot more than just what I usually would say, which is keep your eyes in the sky, because that's very materialistic. Listen to your heart, and your instinct
Yeah.
is far more important than anything else.
And nature has never lied to me. Listen to nature, listen to your heart, find your way that way.
Now, where can people find you?
Well, at mysticstars.net, www.mysticstars.net, all one word. And, by the way, I saw the graphic that you have up on there. That's not a picture of me.
You mean in the middle or the top
Yeah,
left?
at the top left. That's not me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was
It's
one that
that was
Pam made.
someone that did I did a show like a long time ago, and they just grabbed some photo off the net and put it up there thinking it was me. It's not me. And I actually think it's funny because it's like God laughing at me.
Oh.
Because blue dragon mystics are not allowed to be known in public. And so I'm I'm always kiboshed when it comes to sort of being in public. It's funny, but anyway, that's not me.
Well,
The picture of me is on my website. You can go to mysticstars.net and click on contact. I think it's contact or contact us, and there'll be a picture of me.
well, hey, at least I appreciate Pam Brettenberg creating that image.
Oh
And
yeah, she's
yes,
great.
I apologize on her behalf for that. And speaking of Pam, she is not feeling well. And Pam, we're wishing you all the best. And as you
Oh,
said, Pam, that
yeah.
you're going off to bed to feel better, yes, I am not feeling well either. Something came in the middle of the night where, out of the blue, I woke up in the middle of the night, freezing, teeth chattering, high
Oh
fever,
my.
and just shaking. So hopefully I'll be sleeping that off. But with that being said, folks, thank you all for joining us. And remember, everything you need to know about the show is the name of it. That is Dr. J Radio Live. DRJ Radio Live. Every social media platform is under the same name. However, Twitter is suspended or banned. I think it's banned permanently because of some political dissonance, which is a huge learning lesson. I guess I cannot complain about my House majority representatives because they refuse to work with the POTUS and are not getting anything done. We are literally at a standstill. So I guess I gotta keep my mouth shut when it comes to political distance. But with that
You
being,
bad boy, you.
I know, right? With that being said, though, I'm trying to appeal it for the third time to get it back because there is a lot of political dissidence in Twitter, and for the most part, I only post with regards to the show, or I'm responding to people who tag me. That's why I only follow the
Mm.
president, so no one says, "Hey, you're not following me," etc., etc. I just don't like to have this huge every time I go logged in Twitter, because I'm not one that uses social media. That's why Pam
Mhm.
Brettenberg runs my social media. And remember, folks, if you want to contact me and you're going through Facebook, go to my Facebook page, and Pam Brettenberg is the one that runs it. So she will get a hold of me if there's a phone number and a message you want to pass on to me for me to call you. Just send it to her, and she'll copy it and she'll paste it and text it to me. One way or another, I promise you, Pam always does get a hold of me. And I also want to thank everyone else on the team. And more importantly, I want to thank you, Lasha. Thank you for your hard
Oh.
work behind the scenes, for always
I want to
asking.
thank the team too, because they do a real good job. I mean, they're really, you got a great team there, and I feel very at home. Like it's
Yes.
nice to be at a place, it's friendly, and I'm just really enjoying myself.
And I'm glad you're on it. I really am, and it's great to ask you for advice on what to do, and you're
Mhm.
always available and very intelligent and super nice. So I feel very lucky and blessed. And
Oh.
so I want to thank, like you said, the team, you among the rest of the people that are helping out, and we're all working towards the same goal, getting to the damn truth.
Yeah.
The truth is out there.
Yeah,
Some
and it's also in you.
factions, yeah, it's in me and it's also out there, but some factions of whatever it be, ETs, ultra terrestrials, or just greedy billionaires, and not to knock out billionaires, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
some billionaires have so much money they're able to control the media, the politics of this world. If you remember,
It's
folks,
it's such an illusion, though.
it
It's
really
such
is. It
it's
really
such an
is.
insanity to think you can control anything.
Do you
You know?
remember the Minister of Defense for Canada, Paul Hellyer?
Sure.
He
Yeah.
said literally a handful of families that are worth in the trillions combined. Trillions, not billions,
Yeah.
not millions, but trillions, are the ones that shape the whole earth. They control which war we go into, which country should have peace, all this stuff. And I always sit back and say, why do a few people get to have control the fate of
You know
other
why? It's
countries?
because they're like wizards. It's not real control. It's control of money. And if you look at what money is, it's just a written down sigil. It's a magic spell. The purpose of what a piece of money does is it passes power to the stronger wizard.
That's true. That's true. And hey, I'm glad you mentioned sigil. That is something I forgot to talk to you about tonight, because I
Mm-hmm.
believe in sigil magic, and it
Mm-hmm.
does work, and it has worked for a long time. And that's all money is, especially after we left the gold standard in the US.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. It's just a piece of paper. It's not even paper. I believe it's cotton. You
It's
know?
illusion. Other than that,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a
yeah.
huge illusion. And money does not buy happiness. I don't care how much you have. You could talk to people. The hedonic lifestyle, for instance. The more money you
Mm-hmm.
have, the more stressed you're going to be and the more depressed you're going to be.
You create
So
your own prison with it in your mind.
I agree. You're going to have more
Mm-hmm.
leeches, more haters, more stress, and I don't want to be one of those few families.
Neither do
If
I.
if
I'd
I
rather
don't
be
want.
out here with the sweet, simple folk.
Me too. Me too. I don't want
Yeah.
the attention. I don't want the leeches. There's so many bad
Yeah.
things that come along when you have that much money. I spoke to a friend the other day. Actually, this was the second time I spoke to another friend, because I asked one of about a month and a half ago. I said, if someone offered you not a million, $1 billion right now, would you take it? He goes, I'd have to think about that. He goes, you know what? No, I don't want to take that money. He goes, I don't want, that kind of attention. I don't want people leeching for money, and if I don't give everyone the money they ask for, and if it's different from other groups of people, they're going to kill me. And you know what? That's just some of the reasons that I don't want that type of
Well,
money.
money has this energy about it. I remember asking a very highly realized Lama, one of my teachers, and I said, what, if people are so lucky, why aren't they winning the lottery? Like if you have such good karma, why don't you win the lottery? And he
Unless
said,
it's rigged, right?
he said, winning the lottery is very bad karma.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
that
said,
that
bad?
makes
And he said,
sense, Lasha.
I said, why is it bad? Why is it bad? And he said, because you think about it, everybody has an intention. They want that ticket to win, and you're the one that won it. You have all the disappointment of all those tickets that were
That
sold
lost.
is connected to you now.
That's right. And you know what? That's so true because I've seen a couple documentaries on mainstream TV and on YouTube that most, if not all, I think it's most lottery winners, Powerball, Super Lotto,
Hmm.
whatever it be, end up being more broke than they were prior to winning the ticket.
Yeah.
Because they just go on a spending spree, buying castle, buying private jets, and within a couple
Better to just take
years,
care of your
five
immediate needs.
years, they're
Yeah.
they're gone. You
Most
know,
people just want to pay their rent,
I agree. Just,
you know?
my uncle told me something. He said, all you need is money to buy a hamburger a day and stay somewhere. The
Right.
happiest
Where are you
things
going to
in
sleep tonight?
life,
Yeah.
exactly. The happiest things in life don't cost money. And I agree with that.
Right, right. Money creates an illusion. It creates greed. It creates fear. Yeah, absolutely.
With that being said, Lasha, like I said, hang on for a moment, and I want to thank all the people in the chat room who were present tonight, especially those people who were kind enough to write questions and intelligent questions that. Uh,
Hmm.
as you see, Lasha has a huge range of topics. We weren't limited to just, say, UFO sightings or abductions. She could talk about everything, which I guarantee you, if we were able to, we could have done this for, 72 hours plus straight, and we still would have more to talk about. So, for tonight, we are officially going to end it. Like I said, Lasha, hang by. And that being
Sure.
said, Lasha and I are officially signing off.